Thanks, guys. That was very nice. Jake kind of gave away my opening when he said, hey, did you know that Fiona can't have tomatoes? That actually was how I was planning on starting this. But for some context to that, which is what I wanted to talk about, in February, I had some new health news in my life, and it came really out of the blue. It was not something I was expecting at all, and then all of a sudden, it changed pretty much everything about my life. All of a sudden, there was this huge list of foods that I couldn't have. And they were very specific things, too, and things that were in things that I liked. And all of a sudden, the Eggo waffles in my freezer were something I should not ever have again, and peanut butter was off the table. It was crazy. But in February, I feel like my life changed. Not just because I couldn't have these things or eat these things, but because food is a really big way that we participate in community. My young adults group on Sunday nights, we do dinner together, and then on Sunday afternoons after church, we also eat lunch together. And then it's really common also for me to meet with people at Inklings, or to say, hey, let's grab a coffee and go for a walk, or let's go get lunch together, or do you want to go get breakfast together on the weekend? That was very normal for me, and it was how I kind of engaged with my friends, with my community, with my young adults group, with the people closest to me. Even my family, things changed in the way that we were able to be together over food. And I didn't realize how big of a deal food was until it changed for me. And then all of a sudden, community also looked different. And so I started to kind of isolate myself a little bit. I wanted to show up late to young adults group, miss that 6 to 7 window of food time. I was like, I don't need to come to that. And so I kind of stopped doing that, and I felt like I was missing out on community. I felt like I wasn't really connecting with people. I was starting to feel very disconnected. It was like there was a void between me and all of my friends over here, and it was because they could engage over something that I couldn't. And since then, I've learned, and I've adapted, and I've grown, and it's gotten a lot better. But in that void, in that disconnect, I had a few friends step into that disconnect. A few friends step into that void, and they got curious, and they wanted to know, hey, what's that about? Or, hey, can you have this? Can you try this? Hey, what if I make dinner for you, and you come over to my house instead of us going out to eat? That way you can be with us. Or, hey, why don't you sit with me at young adults group so you don't have to explain yourself? So you don't have to explain what's going on. You just sit next to me. It's okay. And so I had my friends step into this place of really uncomfortability with me, stepped into that disconnect and into that void, and they wanted to be near me. When I couldn't really bridge the gap myself, when I felt like my differences made it so that they were out there and I was over here, they stepped into the middle of those differences. And I think in my own life, that is the biggest picture of stubborn loyalty I've seen. That is the biggest picture of a stubbornly loyal person, is that they weren't willing to let my own feelings of difference actually make the difference. They weren't willing to let me step away. They wanted to step towards me. And that's stubborn loyalty. Stubborn loyalty is something that we talked about maybe 2 years ago. And it was one of those things that I was excited to talk about it, and I loved it, and I think it's great. But I didn't expect you guys to run with it like you did. So if you were here 2 years ago, you might remember that. It's not really something you probably consciously think about all the time, but it's something that, for some reason, you guys took a hold of. You guys grabbed on it and you said, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do it really well, and I'm going to do it kind of like sneakily under the table, and we're not really going to name it, but that's going to be what we are here. And stubborn loyalty is something that defines our local community. Stubborn loyalty is something that has kind of permeated all of the relationships that you guys have, whether you realize it or not. Because as humans, just kind of like the way we're hardwired is we want to seek connection. Just like I wanted to connect with my friends in the way that was normal to me over food, we're hardwired to seek that connection. We want to be with people and to be seen by them, to be known by them. And we want to see and know others as well. We want to see, love, and know others just in the same way that we want to be loved and seen and known too. So we're hardwired for it. And I think that's why you guys grabbed on to stubborn loyalty so easily, is because that's kind of natural. It's what we all want. It's what we all need. And now we have a stage to do it here at Local. And so I want to define stubborn loyalty really quick, just to give us a little refresher on what it is. It's a loving commitment to another person's well-being, and it's all modeled after the life of Jesus. So this isn't just some like fun idea we came up with. This is actually like Jesus did this, right? This is something that was central to who Jesus was and the life that he lived here and the life that he wants us to live. It's this loving commitment to another person's well-being. I want to pause for a second and talk about well-being. Well-being is not just like, oh, I really care about like how you're doing with your relationship with Jesus. Cool. That's like all I need to know about you. I just need to know how you feel in small group. No, well-being is so much more than that. Well-being is all of you. Well-being is every part of you that makes you you, whether that's like biologically, psychologically, the things going on up in your brain, socially, your families, your friends, all of those things make up who you are. And at Local, all of those things are kept in mind because I truly believe that you are best understood with all of those things in mind. All of those things. And I watch you guys interact with each other, and I see you guys going to each other's games, going to each other's performances, hanging out outside of Local, being together, fostering that stubbornly loyal commitment to your well-being, which is everything about you. Everything about you. There is not one thing about you that is insignificant in defining who you are. And at Local, I truly believe that that is something that sets us apart. Because we care. You guys care about everything that is going on with everybody. And it seems like this like lofty, like big idea, like, hey, Fiona, that sounds awesome. But like I said, this is something you've already been doing. And even if you're new to Local, even if you're like, well, Fiona, I'm a freshman, like, I've only been here for a couple weeks, I don't really know. You're already doing this. You're already doing this. I promise you. I see it in you. It's infectious in here. We grab onto it because, like I said, we're hardwired for it. And so Local is a faith community where your well-being is prioritized. Your whole well-being is prioritized. No matter what that is about you, we all care. And that's what we're seeking when we talk about stubborn loyalty. So that piece aside, when I talk about a faith community, it's really cool in the Bible what is said about faith communities, about the body of believers. It's all kind of modeled around the human body. Like I said, this well-being of all these different parts of you make up who you are. All of you guys in your differentness make up Local. And so there's these little parts of you, and then you guys are the little parts of Local. Okay, do you guys see kind of how that works? It like all kind of trickles down. And so faith communities are modeled, which is so, so cool, after the human body, right? All parts of the human body work together in some way. All parts work in some way. And so when one part suffers, they all kind of suffer in some way. So like right now I'm getting over allergies. I don't know if anybody else can relate, but my allergies are super bad right now. And so every once in a while, I have to take a really deep breath because I'm not really breathing very well. And so my lungs are compensating for whatever else is going on in my body so that I can like stay alive and keep breathing, you know? And so that's how it works here. When one of us has something great happen, we all rejoice with them. We all are glad together. And so just like when I'm coaching cheerleading, for example, when we do things and an athlete is like, Coach Fiona, I can't do it. It's not possible. It's not happening. My first instinct, and just to give you like a little insight into who I am as a coach, my first instinct is like, what else is going on? Like, are you working out outside of practice? Are you doing the things I'm asking you to do? Are you strengthening yourself outside of practice so that you can go and do these skills? Because I could ask you to go and do a backflip, but if your core is not tight, that's not going to happen. And so much like here, where one part of us is doing so well, we're able to do other things together, okay? So when one part of us is rejoicing, all of us can be glad together. That's how this works. And so I want to recognize that when I talk about local, that can kind of bring up some emotions. It can bring up some things because maybe there's some of us in this room that feel like, hey, if I had something really good happen, I'm not sure if everybody else would be glad with me. Or if I was really struggling, I'm not sure if everyone else would see it. And if that's you, I'm really sorry. That's really not the way it should be. That's really not how it should go. And so, what I want to recognize is that there's a lot of differences in this room. There's different political ideas. There's different sexual orientations. There's different gender identities. There's different theological beliefs, physical abilities, intellectual abilities, all of these different things. Local is a very diverse place. And so when I say, I hope that when one of us rejoices, we all are able to rejoice as well, I truly mean it. And this is where I'm going to push us forward. Because stubborn loyalty is something we've already been doing, right? Stubborn loyalty is something that is core to us. I just want to encourage us forward tonight. And so what I want to prioritize is that intricate is beautiful. Local has this intricate and complex community of different people here, right? Nobody is the same. We all have these differences. And just like my friends saw that I was feeling different and they stepped into that void, that's what we do here. That is what stubborn loyalty looks like. We step into the differences. We step in and we lean into that intricacy because it truly is beautiful. That's how God designed faith communities, to have a bunch of different parts working well together. And so these differences can feel threatening, right? They can feel uncomfortable. That's where we need to lean in to stubborn loyalty. When it feels hard and when it feels limiting to be different and when it feels limiting to be threatening, or when it feels threatening and limiting to be different, we need to step into that. That's where stubborn loyalty really, really matters. Last week we talked about getting it lived, and I recognize that stubborn loyalty is a big idea. Stubborn loyalty is this idea of like, hey, we should be loving to each other. The body of believers is so different and intricate, is beautiful, and this is awesome. But how do we get it lived? How do we actually get this lived? Because we can have all these good thoughts, but if they're not out in our behavior land, then what are we really doing? So I want to ask you, how do you get this lived? Think about that for a second. How does it look like in your life to be in a community that is very different from each other? Where each one of you is not insignificant, every one of you is significant, but every one of you is different. When I think about that, it can kind of feel overwhelming. I'm like, oh my goodness, we have so many different people here. And I want to be able to cater to every single one of you and talk to every single one of you, go to your games and be with you. Intricate is beautiful, but it can also feel overwhelming sometimes. And so how do we actually get it lived? How do we get it from ideas to behaviors? What helps me to rest easy is to know that Jesus will never ask us to do something like stubborn loyalty, like to step into the void with each other and lean into the differences. He's never going to ask us to do that without first doing it himself. That's something that has really guided me in the past couple years, is I can feel like Jesus asks me to do some things where I'm like, oh, that sounds like a great idea, but I'm not sure how to do that. But he goes and he does it for us. And he goes and he does it before us so that we can see what's happening. He's never going to ask us to do something that he doesn't already do or go before us and show us how to do. And so Paul in 1 Corinthians, right after he talks about, hey, here's what the body of believers looks like, and here's how intricate it is, and here's how like complex, and here's how beautiful it can be. He gives us this idea, and then Paul says, and I love this, he says, and yet this is the most excellent way. Right, in that next verse. And this is the most excellent way. So whatever Paul's about to tell us right now, this is good stuff. This is the most excellent way. This is the way that he thinks that locals of the kingdom should be. This is the way he thinks that we are able to nourish our relationships with Jesus and step in with Jesus and know Jesus and to be with others well. And then he says this. He says in 1 Corinthians, He says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. My friends, how we get it lived when it comes to stubborn loyalty and when it comes to these differences that we have and the similarities that we have, love is how we get it lived. Love is the way that we are able to step towards each other in those differences and not away from each other. Love is the reason that we are able to look at Jesus and say, everything that Jesus did in his mission was love. I was thinking, and I was like, as I was prepping this, I was thinking to myself, it would be really nice to have an example of love, of Jesus actually doing love in the Bible. It would be nice to talk about that probably. And then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, everything that he did was love. Love is central. Love is central to Jesus' mission. So much so that I couldn't pick out just one thing, you guys. I could not pick one specific thing because love is central to everything that he did. And then that means love is central to everything that we are doing here too. Love is the reason that we are local, who we are. Love is the reason that we can be stubbornly loyal to each other. That is how we get it lived. Love. Paul goes on to say a bunch of different things about love is this, love is this, love is this. But I kind of boiled it down here. This is how we love. Paul says a lot, love is patient, love is kind. This is how we love. Patience, kindness, contentment, humility, honoring others, generosity, peace, forgiveness, goodness, protecting, trust, hope, and perseverance. This is how we love. This is what we're called to do. This is what Jesus asks us to do. This is how we are stubbornly loyal. The way we love is through patience. Something I've been trying to do, and I think honestly a pastor here said this one time, but in regards to patience, I've been trying to take the longest line at the grocery store. Practicing patience. It's not easy, my friends. But taking the longest line at the grocery store when I got places to be, and I only have about 15 minutes to grocery shop, but I take the longest line, and I'm trying to practice patience in that moment where I really just want to go faster because I live at a very fast pace, and I feel like a lot of us do as well. When it comes to contentment, I think of one of the friends that I have, and in the Bible it says, does not envy. So contentment. I have a friend who is wildly, perfectly content with where she's at. Every time I talk to her on the phone, she says, I really love where I'm at. And there are things that go wrong in her life, and it's real. But she's like, I really like where I am. And I don't want to be there yet, but I really like where I am. And that always strikes me when I talk to her. Sometimes when I need to feel a little bit more grounded, I call her up on the phone because she's so content, and she loves me well through her contentment. When I think about goodness, in the Bible it says does not desire evil. And so when I think about goodness, that is one that stirs up a lot of emotions in me because sometimes I feel like I want to be good. Am I being good enough? Is this what goodness actually looks like? And I think this can be a hard one for me sometimes specifically is because I get really in my head about what it looks like. And I have to remind myself that goodness is the way of Jesus. That goodness is doing the things that Jesus would do. Goodness is keeping Jesus in mind in every decision I make, every conversation I have, and in the way that I talk to people. And that's goodness. So, my friends, this is the way that we love. This is the way that stubborn loyalty happens. We love through patience and kindness and humility and all of these things. This is love. So I'm going to ask you right here to look at this list, and I'm going to ask you to pick one. And you're like, oh, Fiona, I thought I wasn't in school. But I'm going to ask you to pick one. And I want you to keep this one in mind as you go to small group and as you go home and through the next week. And I want you to practice. And this might sound odd because you're like, oh, how does practicing work? But I want you to practice. I want you to pick one and I want you to practice. And if you need to write it down now, I would do so because I'm serious about this. Pick one and practice. This is how we get better. This is how we learn. We practice. Jesus doesn't expect us to be perfect right off the bat. And I certainly don't expect you to be perfect right off the bat. I know that we're human and we're learning. and we're desiring connection, and we're desiring to be seen and known and heard, we need to do that for others as well. And that's what stubborn loyalty is. It's doing these things and loving others through them. So pick one, really practice it, decide something that's going to be practical for you this week, and I really, really encourage you to lean into that. There's this really great quote that I read in a book, and it says, God has moved towards us. We move towards others in his name. So God has moved towards us with Jesus. Jesus came down physically to be with us, and then he died, and he rose again so that we could be with him forever, so he could move towards us forever. So in the same way that God moves towards us, we are tasked with moving towards other people. And we move towards other people in love. And so that is stubborn loyalty. We move towards other people in love, and it's just that. So I encourage you, lean in. Take this as an encouragement. Take this as something that you can do, because you can. Lean in and move towards other people in love, because it is a blessing to be in this community, and I am so happy to be here, and I hope that you are also happy to be here, because it is a joy to worship Jesus and to get to know him together. So lean into stubborn loyalty, pick something, and practice it. And we're off to small groups.